Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, the place where we not only talk about what's going on in the gun world, but also how we're going to fix it together. And the content that we're going to talk about today is, to be honest, a really sad story in a multitude of different ways. But I want to show you something that the gun control is not talking about while they're still trying to frame a tragedy as something beyond what it is. Now, this is a story about a 10-year-old who unfortunately met his demise by another 10-year-old. But the gun controllers are talking about the gun being the problem that it even exists, meanwhile ignoring everything else. Everything's about to be linked in the description box below. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on, because these are the conversations we need to have with tact, with respect, but also with truth. Because what we're about to cover is mind-boggling. Now, here's my disclaimer. I have children. I don't like talking about these things. The things that we're about to cover are extraordinarily sad, and I want them never to happen ever to anyone's children. I don't care about any of the details. This should never happen. However, it did, and the gun controllers are missing one of the most obvious points, either willfully or on accident, and that's what we're going to walk through right now. So, let's get into it. With respect, this is what happened. California mother says 10-year-old fatally shot her son, also 10, after losing a bike race. What? The world that we're living in is beyond insane, but it's not the fact that a gun exists that brought this outcome. For example, let me show you what Shannon Watts said. Again, this is the founder of Moms Demand Action. Check this out. A 10-year-old boy, a California boy, who was shot over the weekend died because the shooter, also said to be 10 years old, angrily opened fire after losing a bicycle race near Sacramento. So, I'm about to show you the article itself. Again, this is in California. That's very important to the story. Here's the second thing that Shannon said. The father of the 10-year-old who killed KJ Frierson was booked on suspicion of possession of a firearm by a felon, criminal storage of a firearm, carrying a stolen loaded firearm in a vehicle, child endangerment, and acting as an accessory to crime. So, before I show you the actual article, answer me this in the comments field. Of those of you who've had children, who have been around children, who have siblings, is it normal for a 10-year-old to react in this manner, have the knowledge in order to do this action? Or does this seem kind of like a nature versus nurture argument? More so against the nurture part, because if you're in an environment where this is an acceptable response to losing a bike race, I kind of have a problem saying, oh, if the gun didn't exist, this never would have happened. I kind of lean more towards what's going on in this environment where a 10-year-old jumps to those conclusions. That's not normal 10-year-old behavior. Anyway, that's a side thing. Let me show you what they're ignoring here, and then we're going to get to what they're actually saying underneath Shannon's responses. This all ties together, and it goes towards ignoring something pretty obvious. So this came out January 2nd. A 10-year-old California boy who was shot over the weekend died because the shooter, also said to be 10 years old, angrily opened fire after losing a bicycle race, which I mentioned. Now listen to the details of the father. The shooting suspect was dispatched by his father to retrieve cigarettes from his car, and while there, grabbed the gun, which was stolen and improperly stored, the sheriff's office said. The child took a gun from inside the vehicle and bragged that his father had a gun, and proceeded to shoot the victim once and ran into a nearby apartment. Okay? You starting to paint the picture here? Again, this is in California. Do one more. Authorities booked a suspect whose name was withheld because he's a juvenile on suspicion of murder. His father, Arquette Davis, 53, was booked on suspicion of possession of a firearm by a felon, criminal storage of a firearm, carrying a stolen loaded firearm in a vehicle, child endangerment, and acting as an accessory to a crime after the fact. Okay. Felon? According to Moms Demand Action, who Shannon Watts founded, the organization which she founded, California gets an amazing rating for gun control. All their gun safety proposals. In California, with all of those gun control proposals, a felon has a gun. How did they get that gun? The gun was stolen. So you're in possession of a stolen firearm. You are a felon in possession of stolen said firearm. You leave it accessible for a child to access. And you're going to tell me, from the gun control perspective, that it's the guns permeating our cultures that's the problem. All the while, your entire wet dream of gun control in California is achieved. You explain to me how any rational person would say, oh, well, clearly, that's the gun's fault. Seriously? Nature nurture? Felon? Stolen gun? California? Gun control extraordinaire? Now let me show you what they're saying below. Again, I'm really trying to highlight the disassociation from reality here. And let me know if I land this plane. But let's keep going. Check this out. Here's a few of the responses underneath Shannon's tweets. Why do we continue to see this happening in America? It's the weapons, not the children's fault. Prosecute the parents harshly who recklessly own weapons and don't secure them. Own weapons? This is a felon who could not buy a gun, who stole a gun. Okay, let's continue, because I've got about 4 or 5 of these. Now imagine what it's going to be like in Missouri law just passed, saying it's perfectly okay for children as young as the age of 2 to openly carry any type of firearm without adult supervision. If you think a 10-year-old loses his temper, what about a kid who's 4? Really? Missouri? They're invoking the SAPA law, the Second Amendment Protection Area. That's what they're trying to go after. But again, this didn't happen in Missouri. This happened in a gun control haven of California, in Sacramento, by a felon with a stolen weapon. How is this possible? How do you disassociate all the gun control that you've propagated? It's all in place in California. This happens, and you still find a reason to blame the gun. Does this seem like it's kind of disassociative a little bit? Maybe about I have a determined outcome and I kind of want to land on where I want to land no matter what is presented to me? This is pretty obvious. Let's continue. I've got even more for you. Only in America, where some parents and most GOP politicians place more value on unfettered access to guns and gun lobby money than people's lives. This is a stolen gun owned by a felon or possessed by a felon in California. I'm still waiting on that realization to click that the gun control laws should have stopped something if they were the magic stop and cure all. This is not acceptable. I want to reiterate that. I don't find any of this acceptable. But the arguments that are being put forward are bordering on kind of dissociative. Anyway, go. It's the guns. Really? Okay, it's not the felons? Anyway, one more thing. Last thing, I'll wrap it. And this is an appropriately named account right here. Karen. It is the guns every single time. How can you look at what I just showed you without even diving too deep? This is just on a news article by NBC, which is not a gun rights advocate platform. How can you look at this and not go, maybe gun control is not the answer. Maybe we have a problem with the heart and the mind in this country. Unless you have a predetermined outcome that you are chasing, and no matter what happens, you're going to blame the gun. Except the fact that homicides are down in the light of ultimate gun purchases that have never happened before. Ohio just put out the fact that constitutional carry reduced murder or homicide and firearm-related violence by 18 and 20% in most cities. Across all of them, 6 out of the 8 had a decline. At what point do we just start to go, you're not a serious person? The points that you're bringing forward are not serious. Because you're looking at everything right here, and you're still arriving at what you want to arrive, and you claim to be the rational one. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to handle this as kindly as I can because it's a terrible tragedy. But the reactions are just beyond me. And, that's it. That's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.